Welcome back to another episode of Capes and Tights, a comic book and pop culture podcast. I'm Justin. Adam's over there remote in another state. Which state are you in?
I am in whichever state doesn't have reliable internet service, which at the moment is Illinois. I am about 2 hours south of Chicago, in one of the most tech-forward towns in the Midwest, and I can't use Google at the moment. But I think I'm good now.
It's insane. Adam's living the why the last man. The infrastructure's dying, and he's out, trying to record a podcast remotely, and it's just not working.
It really is. It's just a weird, more boring version of the apocalypse than we were brought up on. It's the one where like stores are closing, shelves are empty, and my internet doesn't work real well.
Well, I mean, we lived that last week when was it? Last Thursday or whatever, when the Facebook or whatever day when Facebook went down, and it was like the apocalypse for people. People are like, what the hell is going on right now? We can't get on Facebook.
I think the reason that scares people so much is because they realize how much we rely on an infrastructure that we have zero control over. And it's not even just shutting down. They could just turn that shit off if they wanted to. And oops.
Well, I mean, it's sad that two of the top three social media networks out there are owned by the same people. So like Instagram and Facebook are owned by the same people. So their servers are the same, or at least some clusters are the same. So I love it. Twitter's user count went way up because everybody goes to Twitter to find out why internet went, or why the Facebook is Facebook down. People are tweeting on Twitter, which is amazing.
On Twitter, yes.
I love it. Did you see the tweet from a Twitter's official account, which was like, "Hello, everybody.
Welcome back.
Welcome everybody." And WhatsApp's Twitter account tweeted at them, "Hey, how's it going?"
Yeah.
It's insane. But we're here to record. Adam took off to see some family, which is great. And we wanted to get this episode out because last week was the end of What Ifs season 1 on Disney Plus, which was amazing. The season as a whole, I think, was amazing, but we're going to discuss that. Obviously, you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all the conglomerate of social media out there.
Exactly. And unless it's not working.
Exactly. Which is funny because I schedule a lot of like random posts for certain days, and Facebook's post went fine because I guess when they got servers back up, Facebook came back before Instagram, and so Instagram's post didn't get posted, and I was like, whatever, not a big deal, not the end of the world. So we, if it's available, follow us on Facebook and Instagram and all that stuff, but also subscribe on Apple and Spotify. Just search for us on there. So what I wanted to do a little bit here is Adam and I are going to go over like a basic overarching review of the season. And that's what, Adam and I are not really into reviewing each individual episode. I mean, obviously you and I talk as friends just generically about, hey, did you see that recent episode? It was amazing. This happened, that happened. But like overall, like I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of each individual episode. That's just, I think, too much, honestly. So we'll go over the overarching season, 9 episodes. But what I want to do is in this time, give a shout out to our friends at Friends from Work podcast, because they did go over every episode as they were released. So when episode 1 came out, they had an episode come out that week and so on for 9 weeks. So we're not going to go into the nitty gritty of each one, but we're going to go over overarching. But if you want the nitty gritty, I don't have a problem. Go over and listen to their podcast at Friends from Work, or at the FFW podcast on all the social medias, but also on Apple and Spotify. Look for that, because they do go over the nitty gritties of every episode, the nuances and the positives and negatives and all that stuff. So we're not going to go over each individual episode. So do that if you want that.
Right.
This is just an overarching, thing.
I guess as a positive for the show, if we went over every overarching detail, it would take us like a week to do this podcast.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
which
absolutely.
Is a testament to how good of a show it is.
Yes, and then we cover a wide variety of pop culture and comic books. So that's the difference between our podcast here at Capes and Tights and someone like our friends, Robbie and Kyle over at Friends from Work. It's because they only cover the MCU, TV and movies. Right. So they can do week to week, and that's all they're basing their whole series on. Whereas us, we're trying to cover a bunch of different gauntlets of pop culture. So it's harder for us to take 9 weeks out of our podcast and just go over one television show.
Yeah.
But what I will say is the cool thing about MCU's Disney Plus Marvel things is that they're basically doing it like a 9-part movie. So like there's a created by or showrunner, AC Bradley, that did all 9 episodes for the first season. They were all directed by Brian Andrews as a whole. So like you get that consistency that you might not get in like network television or even some of these streaming television episodes. Because you know it. When you watch CSI, for example, I'm just going to give a random show. Each individual episode is directed by a different person, written by a different person, produced by a different person. There's obviously a showrunner of sorts, but like each episode has a different team that runs it, and that's because they can write because it's week to week, and for a long 20 episodes, they can overlap. So like episode 1's director might direct episode 6. But that's why they can plan on episode 1, then continue working on episode 6 while the other people working on the other episodes.
Right.
These were filmed more like a movie, where it's like they were all filmed, or I should say drawn, art. And then the same director and same showrunner for each one of them, which is awesome. I think it's a cool way of doing it.
I do. I think it's interesting to note that, because, there are a lot of shows that fall into that trap of one of the writers directors is so markedly better and different that the other ones are not quite, don't feel right. Like, for instance, I'll throw one out there. Doctor Who's always been like that. The ones that are excellent are amazing. The ones that are directed by some different directors sometimes are total duds. So yeah, I thought that was a great way to do it.
And even in Mandalorian, like in season 2 of Mandalorian, you could tell which episodes were directed by Taika Waititi towards the end there, because you could just tell his humor was put into it, which wasn't in some of the other episodes. So you can see that, like, not in a bad way, but some obscure episode just gets like thrown off of the normal feel of the show because a different director is directing the film, the episode. So I liked it. I think they did that with most of the shows, like WandaVision and Captain America and the Winter Soldier, whatever that one was called, Falcon and the Winter Soldier. They did all those are different. It's like same thing. And I think they're going forward going to be doing that. It's like one big movie, but split up into episodic episodes. Before I go any further, have you seen Squid Game yet?
I have not seen Squid Game. Have you?
We're on episode 6 now, my wife and I. Man. So it's unbelievable. But like, so it's definitely worth watching. I just want to let you know. I haven't talked to Adam about it yet, and I wanted to point it out. It's messed up, dude. It's messed up. It's crazy how it's the number one TV show in the world ever. And it just shows the state of mind that most of us are in the world right now. That's what we want to watch, is some messed up game show thing that's dubbed and subtitled. So it's not even in English, which is crazy. So back to,
I keep hearing great things about it.
I mean, at some point, if you don't watch it, you're going to be the only person who hasn't seen it, because of how many people have seen it so far.
I just got to convince my in-laws to watch Squid Games.
Yeah, there you go. It's also, we're watching it with English dubbing, but we have the subtitles on. But the problem, I guess, the biggest thing is the subtitles don't match the English dubbing. The subtitles are like slightly off, meaning that like there's certain words they say.
Sure.
At one point, someone calls someone a bitch, and it says wench on the subtitles, and they say bitch. So there's these weird like things that are different. I've heard that some people say leave the Korean voices so that you don't, the talking's not off, and just read the subtitles. I've had other people say turn the subtitles off completely, just watch the dubbing or listen to the dubbing. The problem with dubbing to me is it sounds like the guys in a studio recording voices. Which is not the same as it would be if it was, recorded on a set. So that's the problem I have. Otherwise, sometimes I'm like on my phone, so I want the audio. And that's my problem.
Is I find that I so often, like when I'm watching a show like that, I'm doing it while I'm working. Yeah. And so I have it on and I can keep track. But if I have to look up to read subtitles, I'm done.
Yeah.
So,
but there's no subtitals, or there is subtitles if you need subtitles for the What If TV show. But speaking of, so let's continue on with that. That was a sidebar there, but I just wanted to say I loved it, and I want to make sure I brought it up there. People should watch it. It's fun. It's different. It's on Netflix. Season 1 consisted of 9 episodes. It filmed. First one came out August 11th, and the last one came out, like I said, last Wednesday, October 6th. It's 93% on Rotten Tomatoes for the critics, and 94 on audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, and a 7.6 out of 10 on IMDb, which is pretty high for an animated TV show.
Oh yeah,
for sure. And season 2 has been announced, but yet no date yet. What's going to happen on that? So, but yeah. So let's start off quickly. I want to just start off with the animation. The animation to me looked like comic books come to life, and that was the coolest part to me of the whole series.
Yep.
It just looked like I was like honestly opening a page of a comic book, and then it was like if you just opened it up and it started to animate itself and play.
Yeah.
That's what it looked like to me, and that to me made it stand apart from like, I don't know, the Spider-Man and Its Amazing Friends kind of TV show, or the X-Men animated show from the 90s. It's like those look like cartoons. This is more to me look like hand-drawn art from a comic book, which is really cool. It set it apart to me.
Hey, that was, we've talked about it several times. I mean, in my notes here, one of the first things I have is the animation, because we talked about like DC Comics before doing animation, and they're great and they're kind of owned that part of the market. But I feel like this is like such a higher evolution of animation than they did, that unless they figure something out, like this is the new, because I'm like you, it felt like a AAA live action movie and a comic book at the same time. And I love the stuff they can do because you don't have to worry about CGI budgets or special effects. I mean, yeah, it's fantastic. I looked up, was it Stephen Frank is the series animation supervisor of many, many, many animators. But again, you see that singular vision coming through and not a bunch of people arguing over what it's going to look like.
It definitely had that in between major motion picture film real life thing in animation, and it's, to me now, the level of animation for in my book is like the Spider-Verse, Into the Spider-Verse level of animation, like the whole mixed media animation, then this, and then all the rest of the animation that you see for comic book related things. Obviously they weren't going to do the Spider-Verse style because that took them years.
Right.
So a 9-episode series on Disney Plus isn't going to be one of those ones they're going to work years on for subscription fees, not an actual like major motion picture.
Although that's a solid point, that the Spider-Verse really like is where Marvel came out like guns blazing with the animation. So we should say this is a great follow-up to that, because man, that was something outstanding too. And
so the series is all animated. It's about half an hour-ish episodes each, which were great. I think, let's do some big picture things to start off with. I just mentioned the animation. I think the idea behind What If, like when they announced this show, what's back in early 2020 or late 2019, that this show to me was going to be like, oh my God, I can't wait. Cause I love the What If comic books, the idea behind what if something happened and it was different. I do think that if we just go down to a little bit, it's like episodes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe even 6. The first 6 episodes to me were like stellar. Like to the point where I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. Then it started to slightly trail off to me a little bit with Thor. If Thor was an only child thing, and his quote unquote party Thor. So now we have Fat Thor from Thor Ragnarok,
right?
Or Ragnarok, Infinity War, and then we have Thor Party Thor from this show, and then the Ultron episode where he is all powerful and so on and so forth, and kind of twisted some things, and then the last episode where it brought some things together in the Guardians of the Multiverse. What I will say is I was hoping for a standalone series of 9 episodes that were not interconnected at all, that they're all their own individual universes of the multiverse. So you have like, what if Captain Carter were the first Avengers? So what if Captain Carter actually took the serum instead of Steve Rogers? Bam. That's one multiverse that you pay attention to for the specific episode, and then we leave it at that. You don't see her again. The next episode, T'Challa becomes Star-Lord. That's that series. I mean, because if there's an infinite number of multiverses, there's no reason for them to even overlap and connect. I do think they felt like they were forced as a series, as a TV show, that you have to have some sort of like reason to watch them all. Right. And that's why they kind of went to episode 9 with like a culmination of a bunch of different multiverses. But I just felt like the comics themselves don't interconnect at all. It's like one issue is this and then one issue is that and so on and so forth. And so I felt like they could do that for everybody. Like you can turn on episode 4 and watch that and not have to worry about watching episode 3 or 5 or 9. But I felt if you watch 9, you have to watch all of them. So it's just, to me, I wish they would have done something more along those lines if I had to have like a downside to this. And then like I said, if anything, it trailed off towards the end. Like it was like the last episodes were great. They were absolutely excellent. They just weren't the epitome that I thought like the Doctor Strange lost his heart instead of his hands. The zombies episode, or if T'Challa became Star-Lord episode, those episodes are like the best episodes in my opinion. And so I really wish that they had done that more and not trying to make them all be interconnected in a way that makes any sense. The I guess too, just as we're talking about this, I guess we saw Gamora in episode 9 as part of the Guardians of the Multiverse. supposedly there were supposed to be like 10 or 11 episodes in this season, but because of the pandemic, they had to cut a couple. And I guess that's why she was in one of the other episodes that got cut. And that's why we just first saw her in episode 9, because she was supposed to be introduced as a different character in our other episodes. So, but yeah, I mean,
I was watching a podcast where they were reviewing, it's one of the big ones, I forget, but that his speculation too was like wondering if they made that one and then they were like, oh man, that's going to be better for season 2, or let's hold off till we get something settled with IP, which who knows. His argument was that like it was the pandemic, sure, but this is animation, so you probably could have still got in the studio even remotely in a good setup. I mean, granted, they probably don't do the remote for something that high caliber, but it was weird, like that Gamora scene popping up with strange like Sakaar, Iron Man, Hulkbuster that's where it gets hard, I think, with the MCU sometimes, because if you weren't really into it, like, so, you and I even following, you would have no idea how to piece that together, because that's a lot of weird stories coming together. So I think that's going to be something they use to connect us to season 2.
Absolutely. And I definitely think that there is more to discover, because again, I personally always have thought about, I can't think of the top of my head, a Marvel one that I thought about when I was younger, but like a what if this happened? I have thought about other things in life, like what if this, or someone, when this started coming up, a lot of podcasts and things, well, what would you do for a what if episode? Not just comic books, but in general. And I was thinking, I thought this morning when I was waking up, what if Freddie Mercury hadn't died? You know what I mean? Like that, what would the story of Queen be and the history of it? Would they be still on the road like Rolling Stones had been, and all that stuff? If those are the kind of things that say, what if? A lot of what ifs become political. Like, what if Trump didn't get elected? Or what if, Barack didn't get elected for a second term? Or what? Those are usually the ones I think about because of how different the world had been. Or what if we had better lockdown procedures at the beginning of the pandemic? All those things are what ifs that I always think about. But if I took political things out of the way, I was trying to think of what I would do for a what if, and a lot of them have been covered. Like a lot of those, what if Wolverine didn't get the, this, that was one actually Kevin Smith said on his podcast. What if Wolverine wasn't a mutant? What if Logan never became a mutant or didn't have the mutant gene? How I was trying to follow this short Canadian dude and want to see what his life would be like. He'd still be grumpy and quick to anger and all that crap. What would he be like as a non-mutant? Stuff like that. So they could explore so many different things in season 2 and then on and on. They could make this mainly because it's animated. You could do this for 15 seasons every year as a new one that bases the what ifs off of movies and TV shows that had been released in the previous year. Because that was the only rule, I guess. AC Bradley was on the Friends from Work podcast, and they had mentioned the only rules really were you can't introduce a new person. So you can't just be like, here is a new character. Here's Wolverine. Wolverine couldn't come into What If because they want to have that obviously for the major motion pictures.
Of course.
The other thing is you couldn't interact with the Star Wars universe. Like they couldn't just be like all of a sudden I know we're like, here's Luke Skywalker. And so
have you seen the speculation though that Mustafar is one of the planets when there's no evidence to say that's necessarily anything other than a very vague nod. But I was like you, I was like, oh man, let's not bring Star Wars into this.
Yes. Well, I mean, hypothetically, if we're a multiverse, there's no such thing as actual mutants and superheroes in the Earth we live in right now.
Right.
But we could be a multiverse where there's people in this world named Tony Stark. Like there's got to be a person in this universe named Tony Stark who doesn't have billions of dollars, who doesn't have the Iron Man tech. So we are technically a multiverse of these multiverses. We're just the one without mutants and human superheroes in it. So like, it's possible that Star Wars universe is a multiverse of the Marvel universe. The DC universe is a multiverse of the Marvel multiverse because it's just another universe in the timeline that we live.
And that's something I wrote a bunch in my notes. And I mean, this has been true since the first comic books, but I think a big point, like like you said, a big kind of like pulled back picture of this, the Watcher too has always been a stand-in for us, the comic reader. Like we can watch all of these stories, but we can't interfere even when they don't make sense and they don't all line up. That's not really for us to understand. It's just for us to watch. And I think that alone translated just to one season of What If was huge because it brought in that kind of meta aspect of you're a part of this too. I mean, you're a watcher of your own. And I think we've said before that if the MCU too is looking for a moment to kind of fix things, refigure things, you only get a couple times to do that or people stop trusting you. So doing it this way is they're going all out and saying like, we're going to the extreme, like everything's broken. But like I said, I think by having the watcher be there, it makes it feel like that's okay because you're watching too. So I thought that part about it was, I've always loved the Watcher. The Watcher is one of my favorite Marvel characters of all time.
And the art behind the Watcher in comic books that they transitioned into the TV show is the idea that he's got that space, like it's the outline of his body, but you see him just watching from space. That to me has always been fascinating to me. Like that would be a badass tattoo for me to get, is the idea that he's just like there, but like not.
I think that they have done such an amazing job with animating him into the background. Like,
so the Watcher, if anybody doesn't know, and if you have watched the show, obviously you're probably not going to listen to a what if review if you haven't watched the show. And obviously we've spoiled some things here. We could have left the spoiler thing at the beginning, but like, I can't keep track of your lives, people.
No,
if you don't want to be spoiled, don't listen to a review of an episode yet. Like just watch the shows and then listen to this. But Jeffrey Wright plays the Watcher in the TV show What If. He's been in multiple James Bond movies. He was on Boardwalk Empire, Westworld. He's about to play another not superhero, but in another superhero world. He's Commissioner Gordon in the Matt Reeves The Batman coming out in 2022. But he started as the Watcher. The Watcher's name is also, so there's multiple ways to say this. People online will say I've always known it as Uatu is the name, his actual name, Uatu. Other people say Uatu or Uatu or something like that. I personally have always seen it as Uatu online. If you go to the Wikipedia page, the pronunciation says WAH-TOO. So that to me is Uatu.
That sounds right to me.
He's the only person to actually make their debut in this TV show. Like he's not been in anything else ever. I mean, technically his debut was when Stan Lee, they did the Stan Lee post-credit scene or whatever it was. And it was him but that, I mean, let's be honest, this is the real actual debut of the Watcher. He's just assigned to observe Earth and its solar system, not to interfere. He's just there to watch and record and keep track of what happens on Earth and so on. And so that idea of having him narrate the show made it so perfect because even if at the end, and again, spoilers for anybody who doesn't know, at the end where he actually fights in the last two episodes or episode or second to last episode, he fights, he breaks his oath in a sense, he's not supposed to interfere, but he actually does because he knows that all of life and all of existence will end if he doesn't. And even up to that point, if you just had him just literally narrate for us, it would make sense. There's no random weird reason to have some sort of Morgan Freeman narrating this TV show just in the background, because you're in your mind, you're gonna go, why the hell is this random voice telling me what happened in this universe we're in? Having someone whose job literally is to watch and narrate the world and the universe, having him do it, it's a perfect role for him. And I thought having Jeffrey Wright's voice do that, it was perfect for him, honestly. It was awesome.
And I think that's back to what you were saying about that, because I was like, well, you and me and everybody, I think we're led to think this was a true anthology, standalone episodes. But I think what's interesting is they actually made it a story about the Watcher, which again, we don't have time here, but in the comics, the Watcher exists outside of What If everywhere. So there are backstories. If you read them, of course, they can't interfere. But one thing that Uatu is known for is constantly interfering. And he gets in trouble for it all the time. So this was a great way of kind of bringing that in quickly to people to say the Watcher actually is a very involved, very powerful dude. So I think bringing him in as a standalone character is really fun.
And I'm wondering if we will see him, if Jeffrey Wright plays him in the live action movies at some point, he's one of the characters, because obviously, this other thing that this sold me on when they first came up with this show idea was that a bunch of people were going to come back. I mean, originally it was announced that everybody was going to come back and voice their own characters. Obviously that did not happen. There were some characters that didn't. There was no Robert Downey Jr., no Scarlett Johansson, Chris Evans, Dave Bautista, Chris Pratt, Liv Tyler, William Hurt, Brie Larson, Tom Holland, Jeff Bridges, Gwyneth Paltrow, Letitia Wright, James Spader, Zoe Saldana, and more did not come back. So there was a good portion of those. I don't have any problem in my entire life worrying about it not having Robert Downey Jr., Scarlett Johansson, Chris Evans, Liv Tyler, Jeff Bridges. All those people, it's like, okay, Jeff Bridges is never going to come back likely in a film. So like, why would he sign on to do some sort of small part to play Ironmonger or whatever? Robert Downey Jr., Iron Man died. He's moved on. He's no longer part of the Marvel universe anymore. Let him move on. Scarlett Johansson obviously also passed away in the movies. So let's like move on. Chris Evans is no longer a main character. Like, I understand some of these people who aren't going to be characters anymore. The Chris Pratts kind of made me sad. Dave Bautista kind of made me sad. Brie Larson, Tom Holland, Gwyneth Paltrow. Letitia Wright's going to have a pretty significant role with Black, or maybe if she doesn't stop spouting anti-vax rumors. So there's certain Zoe Saldana. So there's certain characters I really wish had come back, but it had sold me originally being like, well, yeah, this is part of the MCU. If I hear, Haley Atwell playing Peggy Carter, to me, it's like, okay, this is real. The problem we always get with why I don't watch a lot of outside of the MCU things a lot of times, like animated shows or so on, is when you listen and hear Captain America on an animated thing, it's not Chris Evans. You're like, that's not Captain America. Because we've been shoved down our throat for the past 10 years plus Chris Evans is Captain America. That's who we hear in our minds as Captain America. So that was the big selling point originally. So I've now lost my train of thought where I was going with this, but the idea that those people came back and did it made it even more impactful to me. And I won't go through all of them because I do have a list here. It's like a paragraph and a half of who did come back and voice their characters. So like, obviously, like I just mentioned, Haley Atwell came back. Ross Marquand did Red Skull. There was Sebastian Stan came back, Nick Fury, Samuel L. Jackson came back, Jeremy Renner, and the big one, Chadwick Boseman, did record his voice of Star-Lord T'Challa. And the sad part is that the season's now over, and this is probably the last time we'll ever hear Chadwick Boseman in an MCU film because he did pass. But I loved how some of these people came back. Kurt Russell came back to play like 6 lines for freaking Ego. Sean Gunn came back. Benicio del Toro did the Collector for an episode and a half. Like there's definitely these characters that did not need to come back.
I think a lot of what you see there are the people that love comic book roles, and the ones that don't come back are, like you said, probably people that are just like, that was a paycheck, man. I don't care.
Exactly. I mean, Josh Brolin played Thanos for an episode, and I mean, but he also Josh Brolin played Thanos before Thanos was actually a main character. He was in those post-credit scenes. That was actually him as Thanos. So it's like, and he was never really credited for it in the movie because it was a post-credit scene. So that was kind of cool. My favorite one though, Seth Green as Howard the Duck. Because in that one small scene it was Guardians of the Galaxy with Howard the Duck is at the Collector. And they show Howard the Duck for the first time on like an MCU film. That's Seth Green playing the voice of Howard the Duck. So that's even fascinating to me that they took that small little one-line thing from a quick, like just basically like a Easter egg, like this is pretty cool. Look at Howard the Duck. He's in the MCU now. And they brought Seth Green to come back and have a couple of lines for Howard the Duck in the animated show. Was perfect to me. The idea that he would come on, and if they make an actual Howard the Duck movie, or if he's in another movie, Seth Green would be a perfect Howard the Duck.
He would be. Yeah, he'd be great. Seth MacFarlane would be really good as a character too.
Yeah, that'd be too. Yeah, that'd be awesome. So maybe it'll be the second season.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I really like. I was not expecting what this show turned out to be, and I'm like you, it was unexpected. So I'm still thinking about it. But man, like I feel like stuff like What If is what most companies just kind of, we can make a quick buck off this. Like there was a lot of thought put into this, and they could have chosen much bigger What If storylines than they did, but they kept it like small and tied it into its own story. I can't even imagine what they're going to do with the second season. Maybe they'll just lean hard back into the anthology for a while.
Well, so my thought is also there's no reason, and they haven't announced a date yet, but there's no reason. The way we live in this world nowadays is like Taylor and I, my wife and I, have been watching Mythic Quest on Apple TV Plus, and that season 3 of that show might not come out for a couple of years because the guy who creates it is one of the guys from It's Always Sunny, and he's filming It's Always Sunny season 15 or whatever. So they just said, we'll come out with it when we come out with it. It used to be that like, no, there's a certain time these things come out. If your TV show is a fall TV show, it comes out in the fall every year. And then you have to film it in the summer or the spring and, every year and so on and so forth. Now that these streaming seasons and stuff like that, season 2 could be 3 years from now. Not that it's a problem because there's no real cliffhanger in a sense, because there's not like all of a sudden at the end of the season, you're like, oh my God, I wonder what happened to this. It's like, it kind of wrapped itself up a little bit. So the long-term thing is, it could be like, do we wait till 8 movies come out? And then there's 8 episodes that come out, plus a couple other ones they move from season 1 into season 2. And it's all about, Shang-Chi and the Eternals and the new Spider-Man movie. And, so it's like, do they just go off of the new characters they have to build off of?
Right.
Because, at some point you have to Tony Stark's dead. So stop bringing Tony Stark back into Iron Man things, back into things. Like they had to go on this What If season to do that. But at some point, let's move on from him. Chadwick Boseman has now passed, so it's a good standing to stop doing anything with Chadwick Boseman in it. Doctor Strange, obviously, you can continue going on with another Doctor Strange ones. I mean, I don't have a problem with that because there is a new movie coming out. But do they just start planning to talk back onto there's just the most recent films and do what if Peter Parker didn't have his name blasted over everything and saying he's Peter Parker is Spider-Man at the end of the last movie? What if the snap didn't happen? Or, moving on from that and going on to the new films and new TV shows, is that where they're going to go? Or are they going to still keep harping on Tony Stark and Captain America and, Killmonger and Ultron and all? I feel like the next season could be 2 years from now.
Oh, absolutely.
And I would be okay with that. Speaking of Tony Stark, is it funny that every episode of Tony Stark was that he basically died into? He never survived any universe. Either the entire universe collapsed in on itself, like on the Doctor Strange one, or he actually died or got eaten by a zombie or so on. And I just laughed. I'm like, okay, we watched Tony Stark die. Do we have to watch him die over and over and over and over again? It's like, God.
Well, speaking of Tony Stark, here's one to be interested kind of your input. I just thought about this morning when I rewatched it. But we have the scene where it's like Sakaar, Hulkbuster, Tony Stark, and he's with Gamora, and they're melting down an infinity gauntlet and all this stuff. But there's a great scene where he's basically saying his thing again of, how do we put an armor around the world or the galaxy? And he's like, because what if there's another big bad out there? And and when he says that, you see the Watcher reflection pop up in his armor. Yeah. And Gamora gives this look like, ugh. And so I'm wondering if we're going to see a Watcher as the bad guy thing. And that was kind of a hint to that, because, man, they couldn't have been more focused on that. What if there's another big bad out there? Cue the Watcher. So that would be an interesting storyline, like the bad Watcher.
Yes, and there's also an original, I think is it the original Sin series that the Watcher someone kills the Watcher?
Yeah.
And they take his eye.
Thor. Isn't it Thor goes to the moon and finds his secret base?
Oh, I'm guessing. I just typed in original sin and it came up with the Bible original sin. That's not what I'm trying to go. But it's funny, actually, speaking of that, as people know, I work for Warner Brewing Company. I just got an email this morning from a church asking if we want to advertise in their bulletin for the brewery. And I was like, that's a weird.
That is. I say, why not?
Yeah, the story features Nick Fury and the Avengers investigating the murder of Uatu, the Watcher, only to suffer trauma from what they see in his eyes. So yeah, that would be another one where you can say, what if the Watcher died, would be a great one too. So I definitely think, so this is a playground for people to play in Marvel Universe. So you could even let people like we had the one director along the way and the one showrunner. What if Taika was like, I want to write an episode of What If? And let Taika Waititi have fun as hell with the whole thing. Just
he could have a whole season if you'd like
cool
it.
Too. Yeah. Well, he's got enough going on his plate. But have James Gunn write an episode. Have some of these directors that have done things or writers for Marvel and the MCU before, and have them do it as a big fun what ifs and just do what if. I also wouldn't mind a what if series, which is 5 episodes long. That's what if say zombies for an example. What if zombies
Yep.
in 5 episodes about zombies and that's it?
Yeah.
Like they didn't have to do individual episodes about something else. Like they could also do
Yeah.
do what if anything, and it gives them an opportunity to do stuff that they can undo, or stuff that they didn't do or did already to undo that and do it again. Like,
Yep.
you know, we saw a bunch more of Black Widow. We saw a bunch more of Tony Stark. They're both
Yep.
dead in the MCU.
Like you said, it could be fun to bring back like guys like Sam Raimi to write an episode and have Tobey Maguire come in and voice another universe's Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. Like I would be totally into bringing back the old movies pre-MCU and incorporating them.
Well, that's the thing is, as we get further along here, we're going to see more X-Men, Fantastic Four.
Oh God, yeah.
All that stuff. So like we could have this, like, what if Wolverine was an Avenger? And they go back and have Tony Stark, you know, or Chris Evans, you know, all those guys, Captain America, Tony Stark, all those people with Wolverine as that original group. What if that happened? What would the snap not have happened, and so on? So I think it's like a playground. They can do whatever they want with it, and I don't have a problem with that. There were some people online that was like, almost wanted to do a segment on this episode of Google reviews for this TV show, user reviews. And a lot of them were way too long, like long-winded. But I think in the future, if we do this again for like when we do a Shang-Chi review, it'd be fun to read some of these obscure, like stupid reviews that mean nothing, that are just someone in their basement just spouting off about a movie because they can. But a lot of them were just like, they were viewing it as an the whole point of the show. Was like, well, why would you kill a universe? I'm like, that's the whole point. It's because they can do whatever they want in, because it's a different multiverse. It's not the one that you're used to. So when you see Peggy Carter or Doctor Strange one where the whole universe collapses in on itself, Doctor Strange movie is still coming out in 2022. That wasn't that universe. It was a different universe that it was in. So that's the whole point. So I wanted to do a little, like, I don't know if you've ever seen the Amazon reviews Twitter account.
Oh gosh. Yes.
Where it's like people reviewing things, and it was like, you know, I don't know. I can't think of one off the top of my head, but it was like something about like, you know, something with animals in the title, but it has nothing to do with animals. Oh, Bowling for Columbine. And they're like, oh, there's no bowling in this movie. And it's
there's no bowling in this.
And so that's what I think. I'd like fun to find a couple of them and feature those reviews in the future and just be like, obviously this is stupid, man. Like, why are you complaining about this? But I didn't have time to get those together. And a lot of them were like paragraphs long, and I'm like, I'm not reading that.
Oh gosh, people take this very seriously, and once you start, that's the thing that happens with like writers, is then everybody gets mad at you because you didn't write what they wanted you to write. And in that case, just write your own story. But yeah, it is. I see that all the time where they're like, I would have done this. I'm like, but you didn't do that. So and you know, while we're on kind of people that were nitpicking, we always like to find weird things that just didn't quite make sense. Maybe you have a better take on it. But you know, super like Infinite Ultron, at one point, you know, he's fighting them and he's like, I destroy entire galaxies with a thought. And then I thought, why don't you do that then? Because you're using a robot army and you're going planet by planet, but you just said you could just blink and be done. I mean, Thanos did it. And I think, and then the what if, we assume that Ultron's got it a little more under control, of course, even than Thanos. So I just kept thinking, well, why didn't you do that? Is that I don't know. Maybe you know more as the comic fan. Is that a flaw in Ultron, or? I
honestly think sometimes it's just like the whole idea behind TV shows. It's like, you know, if you just did this, you'd solve the problem. Or, you know, what if you just didn't go in the house, then you wouldn't get shot, kind of thing. And I think that's the same thing where it's like, these are TV shows, so if they could say that, but if they did that, then there would be no TV show. So like, this is a great episode. What if Ultron won? Done. Show's over. Universes are all done, and we're moving on. So, you know, a lot of people, that's the problem a lot of people have with this whole series. Like up until episode 7, when Ultron won in episode 8, it's like, okay, at this point, like, well, where was this? Like, why didn't he stop Thanos in the first place, kind of thing, before he had all the stones? Like, it seemed like he could have probably stopped Thanos and didn't. And so like there was this whole back and forth, like, well, what if why didn't he do this? Like, why was this? And so that's where people started to deteriorate a little bit. And again, it could be pandemic induced, where it's like, oh shit, we've got to like wrap this up and figure something out, and they just quickly did something, and that's how it was. The other one was, so there's the Guardians of the Multiverse, right?
Yes.
You saw the power and abilities of the Watcher in episode 8 when he fights Ultron. And so the Watcher creates the Guardians of the Multiverse and grabs all these people. First of all, why didn't they grab Spider-Man? Spider-Man seemed like he had some abilities. He could have helped. That's the first thing. The second thing is, why wasn't he on the team? If the Watcher has the powers and abilities of what he has, he grabs all these other scrubs in a sense compared to him, and he could have just fought just as hard against them. But I broke my oath. I'm going to step back. Like, he's breaking his oath because he's helping create this team to fight this thing, and he's interfering in that way. But if you're going to do that, you might as well just interfere the whole way and actually fight with them.
I know. I'm trying to think now. I guess that's kind of on brand for the Watcher, because he was like, well, if I assemble all of these weirdos, it causes a chain of events that at least lets us isolate the stones. And then I can say, like, I didn't really do anything, because I think they are toying with, which is a great in the like, you don't really know if the Watcher can be trusted, even in the comics. Like, he's not a bad guy, but he's not what we think of as a good guy either. He's basically a god.
Well, you have to have no moral compass too, because you're watching all these people die. Like, he watched the snap happen. He watched it and didn't interfere at all. And he watched all these people die. So you kind of be like, well, this guy's kind of a sociopath. Like, he's just watching people get annihilated and not caring. And it's like, and he could stop something. Like, he could have helped, but he didn't. Right. And it's like, okay, I understand there is like, he obviously has a reasoning behind it, but like, you have to be some sort of like disconnected being, has no more, but then you see it, then you see his moral compass and say, okay, now he wants to help. He doesn't want to destroy everything, because he knows that, in a sense, that if Ultron destroys the entire everything, then he also gets destroyed. So then he's selfish in that aspect, that he likely wants to stop everything from happening so that he doesn't die. And so there's this whole, like, he's at this ambiguous, like, do you like him? Do you not like him? Like, I like him because I like him from the comic books. I think I like Jeffrey Wright as the actor, but like, he's the Negan of Walking Dead, where he's like, he's the villain that you want to like. And so, like, he's this like obscure person, god creature that should have been helping all along and doesn't help, that you want to like.
Which I guess is, as I'm keep thinking too, is fascinating. You and I've talked about just personally that it's kind of a big task to take all of these MCU viewers and move them into the larger Marvel celestial universe, because it's huge. And I think for a lot of people, they would be like, okay, you lost me. So this is a good way, because, there's little things, like, for any viewers that don't, like, there's a whole race of Watchers, which is terrifying in and of itself, because, like you said, they can go toe to toe with Infinite Ultron. So, like, I think it gets people's wheels turning of like, oh man, like, the human superheroes are tiny compared to what's out there. Because this show definitely, I think, blew things open as far as how big the MCU is.
Yes, absolutely. And again, they said originally, it's so funny, it could have just been marketing. You have to watch this show to get what's going on in the overall big picture of Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I think the idea is to show you that. That's the simplest thing. There's no connectivity between the 9 episodes of season 1 to the ultimate MCU, in a sense that you have to watch this to get what's going on in Spider-Man in a couple months, or in the Eternals in November.
Right.
It's basically saying, watch out, people. Things are about to get large. And that's what I think they're looking at, is that, like, when Multiverse of Madness comes out in 2022, with Spider-Man coming out in December, with the Eternals entering the picture, that this thing is about to get much bigger than you're expecting it to be.
Yes.
Let's think back to Iron Man 1. The world was so small. It was Iron Man as a superhero. That's it. Black Widow was there too, but like Iron Man. And then it slowly started to build to the point where there's Thanos and there's Intergalactic and all that stuff. Now it's like, okay, that was huge. You're like, oh my God, it's Thanos, other worlds, aliens coming from outer space and all that stuff. And then you have all of a sudden where that's the tip of the iceberg.
Oh yeah.
This is about to get big. And I think that's what they were saying. What if will bring to the table is that how big the world, the multiverse is.
Well, it clearly just one place again, what's brilliant is it's not the same Doctor Strange, but we get an idea now for people that didn't know, like, Doctor Strange is crazy powerful.
Yes.
Like, crazy powerful. And I mean, this is crazy powerful to the extreme in the What If with, like, Strange Supreme, which I got to say was badass. I could watch a whole series about just Strange Supreme with the tentacle monsters and the dragons. And But I think now people are maybe at least going into Multiverse of Madness going like, oh, like this could be crazy.
And they also have talked, and we haven't seen the Eternals yet, which I don't think has a lot of connectivity to anything that's going on right now. I think it's like they're gonna do their own thing, and then slowly at some point, like as they start to grow, you might see an Eternals character in the next movies. But I think Eternals is gonna be like, it's just like Shang-Chi. It's like Shang-Chi and the Eternals are these like standalone movies that eventually will connect to everything else.
Yep.
But as of right now, they're their own movies. It's kind of like Iron Man was its own movie, and then Thor was its own movie, and so on. And they're starting that over again. But who knows? The Doctor Strange, people have tried to, it's rumors online, the Doctor Strange that's in No Way Home could be Dark Doctor Strange.
Right.
So it could be that he's being tricked into opening some sort of accidental multiverse with Tom Holland's Spider-Man in the actual movie, that we got introduced to a character that's not a new character in a sense. It's just a different version of a character. And that now he went from an animated character to a real life character in Spider-Man No Way Home. Those are the kind of things I guess I'm okay with. The weird thing is that if the multiverse, the whole idea was that someone said that like these multiverses that you saw, like what if Captain Carter was the first Avenger?
Right.
Their universes are animated. Like then they look around, they're animated. Like the life they live is drawings. And that the MCU is at large, the bigger live action films would be one of those branches of the multiverses that are real people, that are actually like humans. And so is that the case? Or is this just a different way of medium of drawing the real life thing? Like, was this the Captain Carter that you normally would have seen as a human being, but it's just the medium we were given it in which is animation. So I don't know. And that just makes us think. It makes me love what they're doing over at Marvel. It's freaking insane to see that we can even have this as an option. Disney Plus, like we mentioned when we did that Disney Plus episode a while back, that like this is huge. Like Disney Plus having this platform to release this stuff on, we never would have gotten this ever if it wasn't for the streaming service of Disney Plus. Because like even with the Netflix stuff, there's no way Netflix probably would have signed off on something like this and let them do that when they were on Netflix and all that stuff. So like, and there's no way this would have been a feature film. But I'm looking forward to the future of it. I did tell you, I think it was you afterwards, that's like after watching number 5, the zombies episode, that made me want to, first of all, either a full feature, or even on Disney Plus, doesn't have to be a full feature on major film, animated zombie storyline written and directed by Robert Kirkman, because he did the original Marvel Zombies comic book. And he knows zombies, obviously, with The Walking Dead. But it also made me want a Walking Dead reboot on Amazon Prime or whatever, gory, swearing, mature rated, R-rated animated film or animated series that follow the comic book more closely with Robert Kirkman at the helm, but the animation they're using over at Disney.
I agree.
I think that would be badass because you can make it gory. You can make it, I mean, the comic book has swearing in it. You could do whatever you want with it, but follow closer. Like every episode is an issue of the comic book, or like 2 issues of the comic book. Like, you know, like it's just like exactly almost word for word from the comic book so that you can actually get it animated on the screen. That would be badass, but a little tangent there, but.
Oh no, I think the possibilities with animation are, I mean, I guess we all have known this, animation's just not having its heyday right now, but maybe it's time with the new, like I said, I love you two, people that listen or read comics all the time. There's so much of it that like, I'd love to see, but they're never going to make a movie with live action ever. But I love the idea of this animation where, I mean, you can literally do the most obscure stories in Marvel on such a lower budget than the live action. And so I think for comic fans, it's like, maybe we'll see crazy stuff eventually, like something like Atlantis Attacks, for instance, would be a great animated series.
And Marvel did do recently, it was within the past 6 months, opened a animation wing of Marvel Studios.
Nice. Awesome.
So they are actually starting to do more in-house animation stuff where it's like they know that's the one place they've been lacking in a sense until this series is animation. That like animation at DC is like vastly superior, and not even just superior, but the storylines they have and the actors they have. I mean, they have freaking Luke Skywalker playing Joker over at DC.
Exactly.
Whereas, Marvel doesn't have, so maybe they can get someone like Jeremy Renner to do a Hawkeye show on Disney Plus that's all fully animated, or a movie that's Hawkeye that's fully animated, but just have Jeremy Renner do the voice. And some of them are built for voice acting. Some of them aren't. You can definitely tell on the show there were definitely ones that lacked a little bit other than the other ones. But there were other people who just killed it. And I absolutely love the fact that they were voicing their own people.
Yep.
And so there wasn't many. I mean, I guess James Spader missing as Ultron kind of sucked. I really wish that James Spader was Ultron, because that was like, to me, again, makes Ultron. To the rest of my life, whenever I read a book that has Ultron on it, I'm going to hear James Spader's voice. But I mean, Ross Marquand did a pretty good job on that as well. So, but yeah, they have a future here, and I can't wait. And I'm excited for season 2 again, whenever that is. But I think that Marvel definitely, I personally think if you just take the whole series as a whole and rate it or whatever, I think they knocked it out of the park. I definitely think there were some pitfalls. There were some things that didn't work and some things that did work, but like as a whole, as the Marvel series as it is, I think they knocked it out of the park for animation, storyline, length of the season, length of the episodes, what they chose to do, what ifs of. I think the first season was near perfect, but not perfect.
Right. And I think that's why we've been saying we're trying to do things differently as not just a review. Like very rarely can I say something was just good or bad. I mean, but on this one, I feel like it falls, like I'm with you. There were a couple plot things at the end, maybe too much going on. Like you said, I was thinking anthology the whole way. But at the same time, the one thing I got to give MCU all the time is it's a weird idea that nobody else would have tried. I mean, I feel like that was an idea if you pitched and across the board, most people would have been like, no way. And you're going to use the voice talent from the movies? Definitely not. So like the one thing with Marvel is even if it isn't perfect, it's so new feeling that I don't care. Like that was one of my favorite comic book adaptations of all time.
Absolutely. And I think that, and you don't have to watch the whole series. Like, I feel like you can. It's 9 episodes. They're half an hour each, pretty much. Like, just watch all of them. But if you don't, I personally think like when T'Challa became Star-Lord, episode 2, the world lost its mightiest heroes was an awesome one. A little twist ending there on that one. That's number 3. The Doctor Strange. Okay, it's like a 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're like, I think, epitome. So you have the world lost its mightiest heroes. Doctor Strange lost his heart instead of his hands. Zombies? Exclamation point. Killmonger rescued Tony Stark. Those ones I think were the best. If you watch episode 1, it gives you the simplest, most easy description of what these shows are going to be like, because it's as simple as what if one person took the serum except other than another person. So what if the woman Peggy Carter took the serum instead of the man Steve Rogers? That's a very simple, easy way to. And I love how they started with that, because it's like, what happened at Captain America. This is what would have happened if someone else took the serum. The other ones become a little bit more like you kind of have to know what's going on kind of thing. But that one is as simple as, hey, we're going to lose this serum. I'll jump in there and get it myself.
Somebody use it.
See what happens. So
I think, and I agree mostly 100% with you. I would say definitely the Strange Supreme.
Oh, that's the number 4 is probably the number 1.
Which is
that's
actually
the number one to watch.
What if Doctor Strange lost his
heart instead of his hands?
Is the technical thing. But man, I just, that whole Strange Supreme, like I said, I feel like it had his whole own series and it would be insane.
With Benedict Cumberbatch as the actor.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because
he did great. I think he did great. So that was awesome. So, there's a behind the scenes, a making of, they're doing those things on Disney Plus as well. On October 27th, it airs, or streams, I should say, on Disney Plus, which is how they made this show. So I don't think they're probably going to do it after every single series of the season of this, but I think that they're doing one just to show how they got the animation together, the actors and all that stuff together and did all that stuff. And so that's October 27th, 2021 on Disney Plus. So you can watch that too. That's pretty cool. But as overall, like I said, overall arching thing, Adam and I are pretty happy with this season. I think we would probably be up there in that Rotten Tomatoes critics and audience score of 93, 94%. Again, as an overall arching show, it's 94% good. There's that 6% where it's like different things could have been changed over the season. But
no, and watch it for the animation, even if you're like, I don't get it, because there's something new that like you and I can't explain it unless listeners watch it. But it just feels different. Like, I don't feel like I'm watching, and not to crap on anybody, but like some of this like Star Wars cartoons back in the day just didn't work for me. They felt too childish, too kind of put together sloppily. This does not. This feels like AAA.
Absolutely. It was amazing. And so I think that it's now over. So you can watch all, if you're just waiting for it to stream it all, binge it all. It's great. Watch it. I loved it. Anything else you want to add here, Adam, or are you good?
No, I think I'm good. Like I said, I think we could probably go on all week about What If
We
and
could.
The Watcher. And
Yeah.
so no, I think that about covers it for me.
But if you, like I said, we wanted to shout out the Friends from Work podcast. So if you do want to listen to an episode by episode breakdown, they have AC Bradley came on at one point. Music, we didn't mention music much because I don't like to get into music that much on here. They're the two guys from the Friends from Work people are huge music fans. Like they're actually industry music people. Laura Cartman did all the sounds or the music for the entire series, and she was able to make new songs, but based off of the original songs. Like when T'Challa became Star-Lord, they used the original Black Panther song, but twisted it up a little bit to make it a new song. But you could feel the theme of the original Black Panther song in the song, which is badass. So they've had her on, but they've also done breakdowns of all 9 episodes. So go over there and give them a listen to. They're great dudes. They do the episodic by episodic breakdown of every episode. So which we didn't obviously do. We just did an overarching thing. But yeah, check them out. Obviously find us on Facebook and Instagram, all that stuff, Twitter. And Apple and Spotify and all those things as well, capesandtights.com. Yeah, and tomorrow, this episode drops on Tuesday, October 12th. Tomorrow, I talked with David Harper of Off Panel Podcast and Sketch.com. So that's fun. And then next week, Adam and I talked digital comics versus paper comics that we recorded at the Bangor Comic and Toy Con, which was a lot of fun. And if you missed it, go listen to the Dana Snyder one. That was a blast. I keep on talking to people about that episode. It was so much fun.
It's funny. I mean, I don't know if you're like, I don't often re-listen to our podcasts that often because then I have to listen to myself talk.
Exactly.
But I've listened to the Dana Snyder one a couple of times already, just because, like you said, it was really funny. If you're a fan of anything Adult Swim related at all or general animation, go listen to it now. It's funny.
And even just to hear his story on how he got the role as Master Shake on Aqua Teen Hunger Force was fascinating as all hell. I keep on repeating that story to other people here and there. I just stopped saying it. It's like, go listen to the podcast. Don't listen to me.
Listen to the podcast.
Listen to Dana Snyder directly. And then he did a project that we recorded. Adam and I had to go to Seasons in Bangor at the Comic-Con and did this special recording of voices for an episode of a TV show that's coming out here in the future. When that episode drops, he's going to text me back and tell me what episode that is. And we'll have him back on to talk about that too. So check out the Dana Snyder one for sure.
That's going to be a blast.
It's unbelievable. And then we have a big one coming up that we don't want to announce yet, but we will at some point. Which is a huge episode for us. We're really excited. And so we're excited for that one coming up here in a couple of weeks. But yeah, this is in the What If review of season 1. So we'll come back and do another episode on season 2 when that does come out. But for right now, that wraps up season 1 of What If. Sweet, man. You know what? Have fun for the rest of the time you're in the internet deficit of the world.
I'm gonna get this fixed before I leave. It's my number 1 priority now.
Well, you're the son-in-law. You're supposed to do stuff like this, right?
I think that's officially my job. Yep.
And my parents still text me. I'm like, I was a technical support internet person or network person 10 years ago, and my parents are still like, my network's not working. I'm like, you live in Connecticut. I live in Maine. Call someone from Connecticut. Like, jeez.
Yeah. While you're here,
exactly.
Nothing's been working. But
yeah. Can you get to work?
Yeah, get in
the basement. You have to pay for your room and board somehow, right? Sweet, man. I will talk to you soon. Enjoy the week, everybody, and check out tomorrow's episode. Stay in tomorrow's episodes. Subscribe and all that stuff too. Thanks, Adam.
You're welcome. We'll see you soon.